Congresswoman IlHan Omar may have had some knowledge as to the rampant fraud going on in her community by a bunch of Somali refugees who have, again, stolen $1 billion from Minnesota taxpayers. So, of course, the question is, what did she know? When did she know it? I'll start off by saying this. All of this is circumstantial, but at the same time, we will be posed with the question, is she stupid or sinister? We've been going on that theme for so long here on Turning Point tonight. Stupid or sinister, and sometimes it's a little bit of bleed over, a little bit of both, and we'll all decide for ourselves at the end of this explanation as to which Congresswoman IlHan Omar fits into here specifically. To set it up, I know you all know this because we've been talking about it for days, and a bunch of people have been talking about it. This became the largest welfare scheme in U.S. history, totaling $1 billion. Nearly 80 people have been indicted to date on this massive fraud. Interestingly enough, IlHan Omar represents the 5th district in Minnesota, where 60 of the 79% of people indicted happen to live. They just all happen to live in her district. Most of the money that was funneled outside of the Minnesota taxpayers into the pockets of schemers and fraudsters came from the now defunct nonprofit called Feeding Our Future. What happened was, and again, just to reiterate briefly, these people were billing the government saying, hey, we are providing these meals, and they actually didn't provide anything to anybody. They were phantom meals that never actually existed. The fraud included several thousands of bogus claims providing shelter for homeless people, diagnosing non-autistic children with autism, feeding people that needed to be fed, all under the guise of trying to steal taxpayer money through fraud. Now, interestingly enough, okay, well, how did that money get allocated? How did the money get to Minnesota? Obviously via the Minnesota taxpayers, but interestingly enough, a bunch of it came from the federal government. Representative IlHan Omar herself actually introduced the 2020 Meals Act, which was passed with bipartisan support. Should state that out there. Nobody is without guilt here in this particular situation. But that very legislation, again, introduced by Representative IlHan Omar, led to $250 million being handed out by the Minnesota government to provide meals to school children during the pandemic from 2020 onward. Instead of feeding the children, the money was pocketed by the corrupt business owners that, again, the majority of them lived in IlHan Omar's district. It's probably just a coincidence, right? Nobody could have seen this coming. Interestingly enough, IlHan Omar held her 2018 congressional victory party at a restaurant called Safari Restaurant. Okay, well, why is that significant? Well, the co-owner of that restaurant, someone named Salim Ahmed Said, was found guilty in August of stealing over $12 million for providing 3.9 million phantom meals. But of course, IlHan Omar, who again introduced the legislation that led to hundreds of millions of dollars going into Minnesota, and also happened to be at this restaurant where the co-owner was found guilty of a bunch of things, $12 million stolen. That, again, totally a coincidence. When this person was found guilty of that, said much of the stolen money was spent, unfortunately, and probably not recoupable unless they are forced to sell this home. $2 million was spent on a Minneapolis mansion, and a $9,000 a month shopping habit at Nordstrom's. But again, IlHan Omar probably had no idea that this was happening right under her very nose, with likely her friends involved. Well, why? Okay, why? Well, interestingly enough, also, someone with the same last name said, not their last names, their last name is Said, S-A-I-D, so that will get confusing because, well, that's an American word, and I don't want you to be too confused. Same last name. Now, just to clarify, the internet does not show any direct tie. It might just be a coincidence that these people have the same exact name. But another person named Said worked on Omar's 2018 and 2020 campaign as the enforcer, overseeing voter mobilization in the Somali community. Said, again, the name, not somebody saying something, also ran a fake food site called Advanced Youth Athletic Development, where he falsely claimed to serve 5,000 meals per day. This person also pocketed $3.2 million from the food program and pled guilty in August. Omar and Said obviously were frequently at events together, considering they worked with each other in the campaigns. But again, there's no way Representative IlHan Omar would have known any of this. Because she's either monumentally stupid or she did know and is hiding all of it. Others who received a bunch of fraudulent money claiming to be helping the poor people of Minneapolis in that particular 5th congressional district, also interestingly enough, were donors to Omar's campaign. Who would have thought? Omar received $7,400 in direct donations from now convicted fraudsters. But after the scandal broke in 2022, she returned the donations. Interesting how you can do that once you're elected and the donations have already been spent and used on your campaign to get you into Congress. Yeah, it's probably pretty easy to return $7,000. But who knows? Would she have won without the money from these people who were participating in the fraud? Now, of course, we all know that red flags were raised, and the governor of the state was warned in 2021. The Minnesota Department of Education flagged Feeding Our Future for irregularities and serious deficiencies, to say the least, by the way. I think this is the New York Post reporting. And did not complete any audits. But when that happened, IlHan Omar's top aide came rushing to the defense, saying, "I'm tired of hearing this story. We don't want to hear about this story any longer, anymore." And what happens in so many cases, especially when libs are being criticized, immediately the race card was played. Whistleblowers that were saying, "Hey, there's this massive fraud here. There's hundreds of billion dollars being sent to these organizations that aren't actually doing anything, and they're just pocketing the money." Anytime a whistleblower would say, "Hey, this is a problem, we should take a look at that," they unfortunately faced the fear of being called racist, and therefore everyone was reluctant to actually say all of the things that were actually happening. Former Minnesota legislator David Gaither said this: "When you raise your hand and call into question, you get handed the racism card. You're shamed, you're put in a corner, especially if you're some mid-level bureaucrat. You're told to take some remedial training and look the other way." Which brings us to another bigger, broader point. Not only, and I want to bury the lead here, I think IlHan Omar definitely knew what was going on, but not just her. It appears that a bunch of other people knew, which is inherently a bigger 30,000-foot problem. You know how many people have to know about a fraud in order to steal $1 billion worth of things? And yet, nobody in that community came forward and said, "Hey, I don't know, I was offered $10,000 to claim my kid has autism," but they don't.